Hello boys and girls, welcome to Awana. I'm Teacher Steve, and today I'm going to give you a very interesting story. But before I start our story, do you remember the previous story that Teacher Diana told you about the beautiful angels? So I have a question for you. Do you remember that God gave angels special jobs to do? Do you remember? Yes, God did that. So it was a Saturday morning when Carol and John decided to go to Uncle Peter's place because they knew Uncle Peter was around and he has some very interesting story. On reaching Uncle Peter's place, Carol shouted, "Hello, Uncle Peter. We've come today to hear about the story about the spirits." And then Uncle Peter said, "You're much welcome. Have a seat." So John and Carol sat there, and then Uncle Peter started telling them. In our previous story, I told you that God gave angels some special jobs to do. Not all angels were the same. Some were beautiful, just like some of you. Some were handsome, just like you. And some were very intelligent and wise, just like our guardians and some of our parents. So God created one special angel. He was the most beautiful of all the angels. He was the wisest, and he was the most intelligent of all. And God made that angel to be in charge of all the angels. He gave that angel a leadership position over other angels. And his name, the name of that angel was Lucifer. And then Carol asked, Lucifer must have loved God very much for giving him such a special qualities and job. And Uncle Peter said, yes, Lucifer should have loved God and served him very much. But after some time, Lucifer became proud of his beauty and he started to go against God's willing. So Lucifer rebelled against God. He went against the will of God. And then John asked, how did God feel about it? God was not happy about it. And of all the angels, God loved all of them the same. He cared for them the same. But despite all of that, Lucifer went against God's will. That must be terrible, Carol said. Yeah, it was terrible, said Uncle Peter. But after some time, Lucifer started convincing other angels to follow him. So with time, Lucifer, after rebelling against God's will, he wanted to take the position of God. So he convinced many other angels to follow him. So after some time, Lucifer was the head of these other angels who went against God's will. And then Carol asked a very important question. Did God know what Lucifer and other angels were doing? Uncle Peter said, yes, God knew what they were planning. Remember, God created all the spirit. So God knows everything, and God is everywhere and every time. Like right now, God is right there with you as I'm telling you this story. At the same time, God is right here with me. He's around me, he's around you. God is everywhere. So God knew exactly what they were doing. And then John asked another question. What did God do after all this? Remember, as we read in this greatest book, the Bible, that God is the only true God. So God could not allow Lucifer to take his position. So God pulled out Lucifer from his leadership position and all the angels that followed him, and then he banished them from heaven. They could not serve God since they had disobeyed him. And then God changed Lucifer's name to Satan, which means enemy. Lucifer became the enemy of God because he was the first person to do sin. So, and that's why nowadays Lucifer is called Satan. And then Carol asked, what happened to these angels after they have been sent down? Uncle Peter said, God created a place, an everlasting place that is called a hell of fire, where one day he'll send all the angels and all the people that follow Satan down there so that they can burn in the everlasting fire. And then John asked the last question, is the Bible all about Lucifer? Uncle Peter said, no, the Bible tells us more about Lucifer, but the Bible has very many interesting stories that I'm going to tell you next time about the stories. So that's our story for today. Goodbye, see you next time.
Hello boys and girls, how are you doing? My name is Gideon. Welcome to our today's lesson, the fourth lesson in our Truth Seekers, the roots of faith, lesson 4. And the topic for our today's lesson is the rebellious angel. So today, boys and girls, I want you to get some points, clear points, and the following are the points. The first point is Lucifer's original position before God in heaven. I want you to note that. Then the second one is Lucifer's rebellion. Another one is other angels followed Lucifer in his rebellion. Then God knew what Lucifer and the other spirits were thinking and planning. The fifth point is God removed Lucifer and his followers from their position as God's servants. Sixth point is God prepared a terrible place, the lake of fire, for Lucifer and his spirit followers. We are going to see the names of these spirit followers of Lucifer. Then the last point is Lucifer and his angels hate God. So boys and girls, at the end of our lesson, there are some 3 lessons that I want you to get, okay, boys and girls? And the first one is, if you can be able to write down, the first one is that God is greater than all and more important than all, okay? Then the second thing is I want you to note the seriousness of rebellion against God, okay? There is some seriousness when you rebel against God. And we're going to see that from our lesson today, the rebellious angel. Then the last thing that I want you to learn from our lesson is that God's sovereignty and holiness in dealing with Lucifer's willful rebellion against him. So boys and girls, as we have read from our story today, we've seen that God created everyone perfectly. Is it true, boys and girls? God created everything perfectly, including the angels, okay? So he did not create all the angels the same. Some were beautiful, some were intelligent, and some were more wise than others, okay, boys and girls? But all of them were what? They were all created perfectly. And so, boys and girls, the greatest angel of them was called who? Lucifer. And this Lucifer was given a very important position in heaven. Lucifer was given a place of great authority and power over the other angels. Remember, he was the most beautiful, he was the most intelligent and wise. So he was given that great authority over the other angels. So Lucifer, like all of God's creation, was what? Created perfect. When God created Lucifer, just like the other angels, he was created perfect in the beginning. So when we read in Ezekiel chapter 28 verse 15, it says, "Thou wast perfect in thy ways from the day thou was created." That is who? God telling Lucifer. Then our second point, Lucifer's rebellion. We see, because Lucifer was created by God and given the highest position over all of other angels, he should have loved, obeyed, and served God. But after a time, Lucifer became very proud of his beauty and intelligence and position. He thought now he could be bigger than God. He thought that he could take God's position. In Isaiah chapter 14, verse 13 to 14, it says, "For thou hast said in thine heart," who is this saying? Satan, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation. In the sides of the north, I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. And who is this, the Most High? This is God. This Satan is telling his followers that he will descend. He will ascend above the Most High. And that is not possible. So Lucifer wanted to be like the Most High. And you have said, who is the Most High? The Most High is God. And then Lucifer decided that he wanted to take over God's position as the ruler of all things. And remember, it is God who created Lucifer. And it is God who gave who? It is God who gave Lucifer this position, this great position over all other angels. And now, at this point, now that Lucifer has seen he's more intelligent, he's more beautiful than the other angels, he wants to take the position of God. So Lucifer rebelled against God's authority over him. He grew pride in him, meaning meaning that he wanted to take over God's position. Okay, so for example, boys and girls, we see in our country, our president chooses the commander who leads the armies. So you see this commander, when he grows that pride in him, he might want to overturn the government. He may want to take the position of the president to want and control the whole country. In the same way, that's how Lucifer became. It's God who has given him this position. Now he's standing against God and wants to do what? To take his position. Is that right, boys and girls? It's not. So from this Lucifer's rebellion, we get a word called rebel. And what does this word rebel means? Rebel means to think or act against the one in authority, or simply to do what? To disobey. And in this position, who is in authority? God the Most High. And who is rebelling here? Lucifer. And to rebel is very serious, boys and girls. To rebel is very serious. You are not supposed to rebel against people who are in authority. Lucifer rebelled against God. He was the first one to do evil. Okay, evil is anything that is different from what God wants or agrees. Simply, that is sin. If Lucifer was created perfect, we may ask ourselves, how could he rebel? Okay. So the Bible does not give a clear answer for this, but it does show many examples of the fact that God gave us something very good. He gave us a gift that he himself possesses. Which gift is this, boys and girls? The gift to choose. So this Lucifer had a choice to do what? To remain under God's law and authority, but instead he chose what? He chose to rebel against God. So that's why in his perfectness, in his beauty, in his intelligence, he chose to do what? To rebel against God. The third point, we see that other angels followed Lucifer in his rebellion. Now Lucifer could not take charge of the God's authority by himself. He had some followers. Okay, so many of God's angels followed Lucifer. He became their leader. Okay, they joined Lucifer in rebelling against God. Now, boys and girls, we see that we know that God created this Lucifer and the angels. Okay, so they could not think, or they could not plan what they were planning without God knowing them, knowing what they were thinking about. So point number 4, we said that God knew what Lucifer and the other spirits were thinking and planning. Why? Because God is everywhere all the time, and he knows what? He knows everything. Then we see that God created all the spirits, okay, boys and girls, and he knew what they were thinking and planning. God knew what Lucifer had become. God knew that Lucifer had become proud and wanted to take the place of his maker. God knew Lucifer's thoughts and the thoughts of each of the rebellious spirits, each and every one of them. When we see, boys and girls, we are told that God knows the number of each and every strand in our heads. So the same way also, God knew that these angels, what they were thinking and what they were going to plan to take his place. But God was not going to allow that to happen. In Hebrews chapter 4 verse 13, we are told that nothing can be kept secret from God. Okay, boys and girls? We see that nothing can surprise God. Okay, you cannot surprise God. Okay, you see, when you are in a corner, you are hiding. Then you are waiting for someone to come, and then you do what? You surprise him. You cannot do that to God. He will know that you are in that corner, so you cannot surprise him. Then we see that he knows everything before even it happens. Okay, he knew that which year you are going to be born, where you are going to be born. He knows everything. He knows what we are going to think even before the thought even comes into our minds. Okay, just before even that thought came into your mind, he knew that you are going to have that thought. And God, because God does what? God sees everything. You cannot hide. You cannot hide from God. Even when you go to the darkest pit to hide, you cannot hide from him. And that's why he knew what these angels and Lucifer as their leader, what they were going to plan and what they were thinking. Point number 5, we've seen that God removed Lucifer and his followers from their position as God's servant. Remember in the aims of our lesson today, we said that we are going to see the seriousness in rebellion against God. And God was not going to allow Lucifer and his angels to take his place. So what did he do? He removed Lucifer and the other servants from their position. So God will not allow Lucifer to take his position because God is holy. He is perfect and right in everything he thinks and does. This makes Lucifer and God different. Okay? We are told that God is holy. He is perfect and right in everything he thinks and does. So no one, okay, you cannot compare yourself to him. So even Lucifer could not have compared himself to God. And that's why we are told that no one can take God's place because God is the only true God. So God removed Lucifer from his important position of leadership over the angels. God also removed the other angels who followed Lucifer from their place of service in heaven. They were no longer God's servant. Okay, boys and girls, we are told that you cannot serve two masters. These angels who are following Lucifer as their leader, they could not have God as their leader in authority, and the same way have who? Lucifer in authority as their leader. So God had to do what? To take them away from their position in serving from heaven. We now know Lucifer by other names such as Satan and the devil, okay? After Satan's followers are called who, boys and girls? The demons. You got it right. Satan and his followers, the demons, could no longer live in heaven. In the book of Job, the Bible tells us that Satan could still come to speak to God in heaven because his place was not in heaven. So he could just come and speak to God. Satan and his demons now roam all over the earth, okay? Just doing evil things, telling people to do also evil things because Satan himself cannot be everywhere at the same time. He uses what? He uses these followers. And these followers are what we call who? The demons, to manipulate people in doing the wrong things. And these wrong things, we say that they are things that God does not like. And God is displeased in doing when someone does wrong things. So the sixth point, we saw that God prepared a terrible place, the lake of fire, for Lucifer and his spirit followers. One day in the future, God is going to send Lucifer and his angels to the lake of fire to be punished forever. Remember, our choices have consequences. And when Lucifer and his angels decided to do what? Decided to rebel against God. They decided to do what? To think and act against what God had planned of them. He prepared a place. He's going to send the angels, these demons, and Lucifer to that place. And this place is where we call it the lake of fire. And this place, boys and girls, is where everyone who does what? Rebels against God are going to do what? To spend their eternity. So God will not tolerate disobedience to him. Okay, boys and girls? And God always demands punishment for rebellion against him. When you rebel against God, remember there is punishment. When you do, even just in school, when you do something wrong, when you do something that is against the rules of the school, you're done what? You are punished. The same way, when you rebel against God, you are done what? You are punished. And that punishment is what? Spending your eternity in the lake of fire. And that lake of fire is not a good place to be, I can tell you, boys and girls. The last thing is that we see that Lucifer and his angels hate God. Now that they are rebelling against God, they cannot do what he wants them to do. They do things that are against him. From the time when God removed Lucifer and his angels from heaven until today, they have been fighting against God and everything he loves and does. Okay? And that's why they're roaming around all over the earth doing what? Manipulating people into doing wrong things, like what they did in the beginning. Lucifer's name, Satan, means enemy, adversary, opponent, or accuser. Okay, boys and girls? Satan is God's great enemy. Sawa sawa? Satan fights against God day and night to try to stop the things God does. Satan's demons help Satan in fighting against God. And there's this plan that God made in which to save the humankind from the power of Satan, sin, and death. Satan is against this plan, whereby God sent his only begotten Son to do what? To come and save mankind, whereby whoever believes in him shall do what? Shall not perish and have everlasting life. We see that in John 3:16. And Satan is doing what? Totally against that God's plan. He wants to take people with him to be punished with him in the lake of fire. And I hope you boys and girls, you are not among those people who are doing what? Following Lucifer. So boys and girls, I have some questions for you. The first question, who is the greatest authority? Who is the greatest authority? From our lesson, we've seen who is the greatest authority. I hope you got it right. It is God. The second question, who wanted to take over God's position of ruler over all things? Tell your parents there at home. It was who? It was Lucifer. Third question, what is the other name for Lucifer? What is the other name for Lucifer? Remember, Lucifer was the name he was given during the time of creation, when he was having that authority in heaven. So the other name of Lucifer is Satan, or devil. Then boys and girls, what are the angels who followed Satan called? What are the angels who followed Satan called? It is the demons. Then lastly, what does God do to those who disobey or rebel against him? What does God do to those who disobey or rebel against him? God punishes them. So boys and girls, I want you to take these points clearly, that God is the one who created everything. So it means that God is greater than everything. Even Satan himself and his followers, you should not be afraid of them. Because if you have God, you are what? You're protected. Okay, boys and girls? So I want us to just move to our next activity, which is the memory verse. See you, boys and girls.
Hello, boys and girls. Today is another Saturday, and I hope you have enjoyed the lesson. I hope you have enjoyed the story, and I'm here as Teacher Margaret to tell you of the greatness of God. Today we are going to know God in 5 names. We are going to know God in his power. We are going to know God in his greatness. We are going to know God in his majesty. So our memory verse of this week comes from 1 Corinthians 29, verses 11a. Can we say 1 Chronicles chapter 29, verses 11a, and says, "Thine, O Lord, is the greatness, and the power, and the glory, and the victory, and the majesty, for all that is in heaven and on earth is thine." The word Lord is another name for God. So boys and girls, mom and dad at home, can we repeat the memory verse? Can you say after me? Okay, 1, 2, go. Thine, O Lord, is the greatness, is the power, is the glory, is the victory, is the majesty, for all that is in heaven and on earth is thine. Okay. Thank you, boys and girls. And again, I want us to repeat the memory verse because I want us to understand how great our God is. Can you all see this? Can you all read this? This is greatness. So our God is great. And the power, our God is powerful. And the glory, our God is glorious. He is full of glory. And the victory, our God is victorious. He wins every battle. So our God is victorious. So And the victory belongs to God. And then the majesty. Okay, boys and girls, can we clap for ourselves? Thank you very much. Again, remember, you are the best. And now, I want us to do something very small. I want us to think through the lesson, to think through the story, and now the memory verse. How are we going to think through them? I'm going to ask you questions, and you are going to answer the questions. I want you to be in two groups. Mommy and Daddy, Auntie can also join. I want you to have green and yellow. And every time you answer the question correct, you give your group 10 marks. So we have two groups. And as I ask the question, give your group 10 marks. And here are the questions. And they have choices, by the way. We have choices because we want you boys and girls to understand how great our God is. We want you boys and girls to understand the lesson and to understand the story. Okay, boys and girls, are we ready? Are you in two groups? 1, 2, 3. And the first question, were some angels created evil? Were some angels created evil? From the story, were some angels created evil? Okay, boys and girls. And the answer is B. The answer is no. All angels were created perfect. All angels were created perfect. Okay, boys and girls, question number 2. Who is the most powerful? Choice A, we have Lucifer. Choice B, we have God. And choice C, we have angels. Who is the most powerful? Boys and girls, Mom and Dad, green team, and yellow team. And the answer is B. God is the most powerful. Can we say God is the most powerful? Okay, question 3. Was Lucifer the first angel to do evil? Boys and girls, was Lucifer the first angel to do evil? Yes, A, and B, no. And the answer is yes, which is A. Lucifer was the first person to do evil. The fourth question, what happened to Lucifer when he disobeyed God? Boys and girls, Mommy and Daddy, aunts, what happened to Lucifer when he disobeyed God? The first, A, he was rewarded. B, nothing happened to him. C, God removed him from heaven, and that is the answer. When Lucifer disobeyed God, he removed him from heaven. And now the last question. What else did God do to Lucifer and all the evil angels? What else would God do to Lucifer and all the other evil angels? Boys and girls, what else will God do to Lucifer and all the other evil angels? A, nothing. B, punish them in the lake of fire forever. And C, let them come back to heaven. And the correct answer is 5B. God will punish them and put them in the lake of fire forever. Boys and girls, thank you so much. That is the end of our lesson. That is the end of our memory verse for the week. I hope you continue memorizing that verse. See you on Saturday from 2 p.m. Kindly remember to ask your parents to tune in for another exciting moment with our Kenya. God bless you, we love you, and God loves you. Bye, boys and girls.